Shooting it raw?
Yes. Shooting it raw. Okay, wow, starting with a bang. Look at that. Oh, I love it. Okay, so it's a photo of a console. So there's like at the very, very close up of the photographer, it's like there's like an audio console, and then there's like two large screen monitors, and there's a woman who looks a lot like you on the screen, with her hands open wide. You're speaking to a conference, I think, and on the left is just you, and on the right is like multiple cameras, 1 2 3 4, like maybe 6 or 8 different cameras. It's a really good setup, and that's all in focus. And then what's out of focus in the background is the room, so you can just see the screens. You can see the speaker, you, I guess, with a pink jacket very far away, and all these heads. It looks like a business conference more than like a exhibition center conference.
Yeah.
So what is this?
That is me keynoting a few weeks ago, and it was for the Canadian Mental Health Association, one of their area organizations, had a conference, and I actually was the keynote speaker to open the day, and then shifted into MC role and facilitation role. And this is my work. This is what I live to do, is to help people come out of the destructive stress cycle. I really believe that people are unnecessarily suffering in their stress levels in our society, and that there are many ways that I learned how to deal with stress that were traditional but not effective. And so this work, this particular speech, was a bit of a, how do I put this, like this is the Canadian Mental Health Association, right?
Mm-hmm,
like they're the experts when it comes to mental health and stress. And I was about to go on stage and say, basically what you're teaching people is not exactly the answer that they need.
Okay.
And they loved it. And so anyway, that was my session. I as a keynote speaker, and it wasn't in a big conference center. Like sometimes you're on those huge stages.
Yeah.
And this was more of an intimate gathering. I think there were about 150 people in the room. And we had a great conversation about how do we shift and deal with all of the stuff that's going on in our lives and stop burning out, but still do the thing we love to do, which is serve people.
Allison, really nice to meet you. This is great. Okay, so the words that pop into my head, one is that you're a speaker. You have a kind of position or role, and as a keynote speaker, that is recognized as, okay, here's somebody who's dedicated some time to have some kind of expertise or mastery over a topic. And then you mentioned mental health, which is one of the themes, I guess, not necessarily mental health, but how to, I mean, there have been a few guests on the podcast who have been in and around the world of mental health. And so I'm fascinated. That's really great. And strong women. Well done. Yes, this is awesome. And then where to begin? So how about you take the reins and say, because you've already opened the door to some amazing things. So do you want to focus on the crux of your work?
Sure. We can.
Sure.
We can focus anywhere you want. I'm here. How long do we have?
I want to learn. However long.
So let's start with, what am I saying? So the new book is coming out in 2023, and it's going to be called, or it is called, The Stress Illusion.
Cue applause. Okay, nice.
Yes. And I actually have 20 lies that I believe we're told about stress.
Okay.
And one of them that I think is the most important, that causes the most angst for people, is this notion of all these behavior-based techniques. So in order to manage your stress, you need to exercise, you need to breathe deeply, you need to be mindful, self-care. You need to, have proper nutrition. And they're actually, I call them the critical six.
You're very provocative, because, wait, what you're just saying right now is very, what's the word? When you're saying something that goes against the grain.
Counterintuitive.
Definitely counterintuitive, but it's counterintuitive. Well, whatever the word is, but that's you.
Yes, I like to think so. Uh, no, and I'll tell you why I'm like, there is another word. I know the word you're looking for, but I don't know which one you're looking for. But now my mind is going to find it. But we'll find it by the end. I definitely am challenging the status quo.
Yes.
And here's why. Because if you talk to someone who is burning the candle at both ends, maybe they are trying to get a side hustle going, they're working in the corporate market, they're climbing the ladder, they've got a spouse who they're trying to be a really great partner for, maybe they have kids, somebody in their family has a health challenge, they're caring for an adult, and you tell them that the answer to their woes and their unhappiness is to exercise and breathe deeply,
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to call BS on that.
Okay.
Right? So there's a difference in my philosophy between management of stress, which assumes the stress hormones are going to fire, and how do I deal with the fact that they're already firing,
Mm-hmm.
and stress reduction, which is how do I fundamentally stop creating the stress reaction so that I no longer need to manage it.
Okay.
And so that is the part that I think is missing from the conversation. So yeah, we'll say things like platitudes, right? Like, oh, just let it go, or don't take it personally, or, don't sweat the small stuff. And those platitudes, what ends up happening is people start judging themselves because they're like, I know I'm not supposed to take it personally, but I'm taking it personally.
Mm-hmm.
Feels mighty personal to me because I'm the one having the reaction to it.
Mm-hmm.
And this kind of advice, when I started my journey, I remember the moment that I became obsessed with resilience, stress management, stress reduction, burnout management, and recovery. It's all interchangeable, by the way. So you can use any of those words and they kind of mean the same thing as a whole. It's part of the human experience. And my neurologist, I was screaming at him and ugly crying, and I was in the hospital and I was absolutely desperate because 2 years before that appointment, I'd had a surgery and they made there was a few things went wrong, and I ended up with neuropathic pain.
Oh, wow.
And I didn't know how to manage it. Like, it was medication after medication. It was all these different surgeries to try to fix the damage that was caused from the first beyond just the nerve pain. And I'd gone through all these other things where I had some injuries and people who I loved died. And I couldn't take it one more second. And I was the poster child for what burnout would be.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, Allison, you're never going to work full time again. You're never going to be off pain medication. And it's time for you to consider going on disability.
Okay.
And I refused. I was like, yeah, that's not going to happen. In my desperation, I knew giving up wasn't the answer. And he said, well, then you're going to need to learn how to be resilient.
Mm-hmm.
And that gave me, I didn't know exactly what that meant, but it gave me enough hope. And then it caused so much frustration because I was going out trying to find resilience advice. And this is before YouTube was the level it is now, and where everybody was a self-help expert and, the world we're in. But what I was finding is the biggest resilience stories were the ones of professional athletes. Well, I was just trying to get out of bed and build a company, for myself, like a solopreneur. Yeah. And I had 2 to 5 hours of functionality a day. I didn't have doctors. I didn't have a coach who were, injecting me with, cortisol cream to get back on the court. It just, or no, I don't know. What is it? Cortisol? No, what's the stuff they put in the lidocaine in the knee joints?
Okay. I think it's cortisone shots.
Yeah, it might be cortisone. Yeah, not cortisol. That's the stress hormone. I was like,
right.
Anyway, so it didn't relate to me. And as I went and I looked for all this standard advice, I'm like, exercise. No, some days it was the best thing I could do. Some days I couldn't get out of bed.
Well, I have to interrupt for a second. Mm-hmm. So you had a neurologist, and generally speaking, when you kind of have to see a neurologist, it's because of something pretty severe that happens within your brain basket.
Or within your nerve system, your nervous system.
So school me. What happened?
So he, I had the surgery. It was a cyst. And
the surgery is what triggered it.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. The doctor sort of cut, pulled. And he pulled one of my main branches of a nerve. And they say that what they did is ripped the sheath.
Oh, shit.
So a nerve that is cut straight
Mm-hmm.
heals or is fine. The one that has the sheath ripped keeps firing. And there are certain
Yep.
types of nerves in our body that spend their lives trying to go back to the way they used to be.
Yep. Yep. Well, okay. So in your training, in terms of what made you you,
Mm-hmm.
why? Okay. So something personal happens to you and in a way forces you to have to become an expert in your own self of neurology or whatever. Was that something you're already in looking at, was already part of your life? Or was this, all of a sudden you're just like, well, this is the new me now. I have to really understand this whole thing. Like, what did you study or what did you do before and after this big change?
Certainly not that. I certainly did not expect to become this person. So before that, I was actually a columnist. I was, by
Whoa.
that point, I was a writer and I was raising money for social services
Wow.
and I worked for different charities. I was the executive director of an organization that supported people with an eating disorder
Oh, wow.
and their families. And I was not a clinician in any way.
Mm-hmm.
I did have a strong sense of community involvement. Like I really believe in giving back to the community. And in fairness, looking back, I probably did that to the detriment of my giving to myself.
Mm-hmm.
And, I was always focused on what does everybody else need.
But it's still who you are, because as you're saying this, I've got this really arresting image of which people can see on the website, on YouTube, in the show notes, all that business, of you giving to a community of peers in a way through a talk. So that's obviously something as who you are, right?
Oh, it's so ingrained. I
Yeah,
think so. Yes. And people who are givers, and I suspect most of your people who are listening, I mean, most of us, is part of the human nature, right? We want to
sure.
help other people.
Mm-hmm,
Like
mm-hmm.
you're doing this podcast because you want to bring knowledge not just to yourself, but to others,
No,
right?
it's not about others. There's no audience at all to this podcast. It's only for me. It's not published.
All right,
Kidding.
fair enough.
Kidding.
Fair
Kidding.
enough. So I think that desire
Mm-hmm.
is ingrained in who we are as people.
Yeah.
What happens is when we do that to the detriment of our own needs, that we get too far down the rabbit hole of it can actually, a good thing can become a negative.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. We're going to move on to the next image, but what was the title of your talk?
This particular one was called the coping fatigue, what to do when you're exhausted from having to be resilient.
Huh. Interesting.
Mm-hmm.
So contra something, the word we're looking for.
Contraindicative?
No, not contradictive, but not contradictory. Well, it'll come to us. The word will come. Let's go to the next photo.
Go for it.
Okay. But we're going to pump your book. What's the name of your book again?
The new one will be called The Stress Illusion.
The Stress Illusion. And the previous one?
Was I've had, this will be my 5th published book.
Respect.
Like in print book. I've done some ebooks and stuff, right?
Amazing.
But this one when did I release that? Maybe 2 years ago, was Take Back Your Weekends.
Okay.
Stress less, do more, be happier.
Okay.
And it was really about putting the problem solving framework that I teach onto the fact that you have way too much to do.
Listen to all these things that you're saying that I want to know about. Okay, let's move on to the next photo.
Okay.
So is life really a gift? Really? Can you make every second count? That's the whole point of the podcast. So if you like what you've seen and you're inspired, because that really is my mission, then please give it a like, subscribe, and share.
Tuning it raw?
Yes.